All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pen to Paper. I'm Leah Lindeman, author of the Canadian Reminiscence series. And today we have Judy Leslie with us. And she is here to talk about her novel, The House at the Cove, which is the first novel in a series. So, welcome, Judy.
Thank you.
Yeah. And tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, what you write, and one fun fact.
Okay, well, I've been writing for a long time, um, since I was a kid. Like a lot of writers, they kind of
Mm,
do that. But I did study literary fiction and genre fiction at the University of Washington. And
okay.
I also had a couple mentors. One gal you probably are too young to know, Rebecca Wells. She went on
Hmm.
and wrote the Yaya Sisters that they made into a movie. She was one of my mentors. And then there's a couple of other women that have been my mentors too that have had successful writing careers. Um, I live in the same community as Bob Degoni, who writes mysteries. He's a bestseller in that. So I have some friends that have been successful in writing, and they've kind of nudged me along here and there. So that's that's nice. I see
Isn't that
so many beginning writers out there, and I think, whoa, you got a long road to haul.
Yeah, but isn't that amazing that you had that community right away? That's something that I realized I would have wished I had starting
Mhm.
out. Just you get so I just recently wrote a response to this for an interview, how just there's this mentality of authors are lone wolves and it's a
Mhm.
very lonely journey, which it can be, but it doesn't have to be because you can get yourself mentors and you can build yourself a community and
Mhm.
you uplift each other right along the writing journey. So
Yeah.
that's amazing you had that right off the bat.
Yes. Well, it's been an interesting journey, and I've had a lot of failures.
Mm, yeah.
People, I had my what I call my 20-year training novel that I
Oh,
worked on,
okay.
and I schlepped that story to all sorts of writing classes and worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. And I've never published it, but
Oh,
it was you know my training novel. So people
okay.
commented on it. They helped me, with it. And I worked one on one with a gal who mentored me on that particular story, gave me a lot of resources. It was a historical fiction, and
Oh, okay.
it was about a woman who homesteaded, and so it
Mm,
was all the challenges that went around that, and it was based on my grandparents, on their story. And when I was taking genre fiction, I decided to go in an entirely different direction and did a different book, which I
mm,
published, which was my first book that I published. And that was like over 10 years ago. And fortunately, at that time, it was easier to become successful. And with the
mm.
help of a BookBub ad, that one hit number 3 for a couple of days on Amazon. So I was really
Okay.
lucky with that one. And
Wow.
and then after that, while I was writing that, I developed a shoulder problem, and I was unable to write. I went to Pilates for a year to help me be able to do that, to
Okay.
fix my back and fix my
Yeah.
shoulder and that. So it took me a while until the pandemic. Then I started writing again, and I wrote the Cook's Cove series and the Love and Leavenworth series.
Okay. Wow. That's a yeah. I couldn't imagine being held back in a physical way from something that you love to do, but and the Pilates helped
Yes.
like
Oh,
the shoulder.
definitely.
Okay. Wow.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, that's amazing. Yeah, I love that whole story about like how you started young, you had mentors, and amazing with the BookBub ad. So, what made you decide to take the leap of doing a BookBub ad, and then like how did you get over that fear, overcome that fear? Like, oh, is it going to work? I have to put money into this, right?
Well, I was lucky again. A couple of people that have gone on to become successful, and I was in a Facebook group
Hmm.
of beginning writers, and we were all very supportive. And there was a numbers guy in it, and he was, trying to figure out how to get everybody on the New York Times bestseller, which I was $200 books short of making at that
Okay.
particular time, which was,
Oh, that's
but
still pretty close.
yeah, he was very helpful. He told me I needed to get a BookBub ad, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I got one. And at that time, my book that I wrote then, the historical fiction, was based on a true story. Um,
Hmm.
and it was about a woman during the 1880s who was a very successful um, uh, newspaper writer that
Okay.
she worked for the Associated Press and she wrote under a male alias because women weren't
Mm.
thought able to write. And she was married to an Irish mafia guy, and he was head of a secret Irish American organization called the Clan of Gael. And so
Okay.
my story has spies in it, and it has corruption and all sorts of stuff going on, and it's all based on a true
Wow.
story. So we went to Ireland. I have a Parnell who was a representative to Ireland, to England. Um,
Okay.
and so we went to Parnell's house. I had written them ahead of time and told them that we were coming. And so when we got there, it was like a Downton Abbey type of place, and they took us downstairs, and they had the place closed. They just had my husband and myself, and they had, crumpets and things for us downstairs to eat. And they
Oh
gave
my
us a
goodness.
tour of the house, and you're not allowed to take pictures, but they let me take pictures
Mm.
because several of the scenes of my story took place in the house. So now I had a
Okay.
visual. So when I described
Wow.
things, I knew what things actually looked like. And that was
What an
really
amazing.
cool.
That's amazing. Oh my goodness. And so that book, that historical fiction book is out, correct?
Yeah, it's called
Okay.
For the Love of Ireland.
For the Love of Ireland.
Yeah.
Okay. That's something going on my TBR along with the Cook's Cove series. Well, speaking of the Cook's Cove series,
Yes,
we're here for that, right? So,
yes, yes.
yeah. So, House of the Cook Cove, or sorry, House of the Cove or At the
At
Cove
the Cove.
introduces readers to Jenny, right? She's a
Yes.
woman that she's drawn into this web of secrets from her aunt and family secrets, and she goes back to her Aunt Susan's home. So, what inspired you to create the story and the setting at Cook's Cove? How did
Okay.
that come to life in your writing? Like, what was behind that inspiration, and what makes the setting special to you?
Well, I've had an interesting life. I'm an old person, so I've had a lot of
I can
experience.
tell.
So when I was 20 years old, I went to Bellingham. Bellingham
Okay.
is mentioned in my book. And I bought an antique shop, and I lived in the back of it. And
Wow.
I was real excited about all the merchandise. And so I did research as much as I could. And then I realized that there was a story connected to everything in the antique shop,
Mm-hmm.
and so my inspiration for Cook's Cove, since it takes place, it's a fictional town below Bellingham, but I mentioned Bellingham, and
Okay.
there's a very windy road between Bellingham and going south, and that I don't name it, but it's called Chuckanut Drive, and it's in my story too. And so
Okay.
I put my story in a fictional town, but it was kind of based on my experience of living in Bellingham. And I also, after I sold my antique shop, I went and lived on the Lummi Indian Reservation, and so
Oh.
I have some of the in my other books in the series, I have some of the native myths, and my
Mm.
detective that's in the later stories is a native. Um, he's a Lummi Indian. So,
Wow. That
so it,
that's amazing. Okay. And I guess people who live in Bellingham, they could kind of feel that you've set it around that area and it would be familiar to them. And
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Some of it would be because when I lived there, it was an interesting time. I mean,
Hmm.
and antiques were more popular then, And I do refer in my Cook's Cove story, Jenny inherits her aunt's antique shop and house, and the house is 100 years old.
Oh,
And
okay, so an antique shop as well. Okay.
so Jenny's really torn because she promised her aunt on her deathbed that she would go and
Mm,
stay at the shop in the house. Now, every year since Jenny was born, she spent her summers at her aunt's so her parents could travel. So it
mm,
was kind of a built-in babysitter. And
yes.
her parents were wealthy, but her aunt is eccentric. And her aunt was, you know, um, not really thrilled with the lifestyle that Jenny was being conditioned into. And Jenny had a lot of conflict, internal conflict about should she stay in San Francisco and marry the man that she's engaged to and follow the career path that her parents wanted, or should
Okay.
she follow through on her promise to her aunt? Now, at the
Mm.
beginning of the story, the book is also an audio, so people can listen to part of the first
Oh,
chapter. And
nice.
it's all my books start with something happening right away. And
Okay.
in that book, that the hook with that story is Jenny's Aunt Susan driving, and the car is out of control on Chuckanet Drive, and she goes off the
Oh.
cliff.
Oh. Oh my goodness. That's definitely something that grabs the attention right away. And
Yes, yes.
definitely, there's no coming back from that, I guess. Wow. Okay.
So that gets the story going, and then
Yeah.
she she survives, but
Yeah.
she's in the hospital, and she dies in the hospital with Jenny there. Jenny goes
Hmm.
to be there with her, and so her aunt was going to tell her a secret before.
That's what I was going to ask. If there's
Yeah.
a secret that's leaving the bedside
Yes.
before she dies. Yeah.
So she doesn't know what it is, and she doesn't
Okay.
know until she moves in the house that someone cut the brakes on her aunt's car.
Oh, okay.
So
And
the
that's who the
mist,
killer is.
yes. And so we're trying to find out who the killer is, and Jenny's dealing with grief over her aunt and her
Yes.
struggle between trying to do what her mother wants back in San Francisco and what her fiance wants, and what.
Mm.
So in some ways it's a coming of age because
Hmm.
she finds out who she is as she
Yep.
explores who her aunt was and why somebody
Hmm.
killed her aunt. And it's a very character driven story. It has a lot of interesting characters. Her assistant in the shop who worked for her aunt is a Lummi, a girl, a Native
Okay.
American girl.
Yeah.
And she meets a man that her aunt wanted to introduce her to before her aunt died, that is
Oh,
is an Irishman, and
how fitting.
he's a fiddle player, and he plays at the bar in town. So
Uh-huh.
when she goes there, there's a connection.
For sure. Why would there not be?
So it's a slow burn romance in
I
that
love
sense.
that. Yeah.
So they get to know each other, and he tries to help her, and she's
Mm.
dealing with grief, and she's also dealing with trying to solve the mystery of who killed her aunt. And it's got a lot of twists, and everybody who reads it said they never expected the ending. They just hadn't guessed. They were
Oh,
totally caught off
wow.
guard.
Where has this book been my entire life? I love slow burn romance. I love the twists, but I also really enjoy character-driven stories. I
Yeah.
find plot-driven ones are great too, but yeah, character ones I find just draw me in better. So, being that it's a character-driven story, how did you handle, building that suspense, but also dealing with Jenny's grief and that
Yeah.
transformation that happens while she's,
Yeah.
taking care of her aunt's house?
I think often, um, you know, Jenny's aunt is a ghost in the house,
Hmm.
But
Okay.
Jenny's not sure if she's a ghost or just her needing her aunt. Now,
Mm,
if anybody has lost anybody close to them, sometimes they feel that person at different
mm,
times. And so
hmm.
I wanted that to be in the story. And I wanted Jenny to really reflect on the closeness that she had with her aunt. And her aunt was kind of the black sheep in the family. Her
Okay.
mother didn't like her aunt, didn't like the influence, she had on Jenny and all of that. So
But she was willing to send her there
yeah,
so she
yep,
could get her freedom, I guess.
yep.
So hypocritical.
And
But
then
there are people like that.
her fiance in San Francisco is very controlling,
Mm,
and he's
hmm.
very mysterious too. I mean,
Okay.
he rushes into well, it was her mother and his idea for her to get married, and they kind of sprung it on her, and
Oh,
she was not sure that she wanted to marry him.
okay.
So
Yes.
she's kind of going through, she didn't really have that fairy tale love with him, and
Mm,
he was controlling, and so she, you know, was very adamant about staying in Bellingham, and he didn't
hmm.
want her to. He wanted her to come back, and so there's all sorts of different twists and turns. There's a dog in the story. There's all sorts of different.
Oh, that's great for the pet. I know so many readers who are there a lot of the times for the pets. So
Yeah,
that's nice. What is the dog's name?
salty.
Oh, that's so cute. That works really well with, the ocean
Yeah,
theme.
she was a stray on the beach, stray, and so she was
Okay.
brought over by Tess, and Tess was Jenny's aunt Susan's best friend, and Tess
Okay.
runs a boat repair business on the docks.
Mm, mm-hmm.
So just to give you a little bit, I'm writing the prequel right
Yeah.
now, and
Oh,
it's all about um, Susan, Jenny's aunt, backstory, and Tess. Tess is in it, and
okay.
she's eccentric, and there's a lot of quirky things and spooky things that go on. It's more of a thriller in a lot of ways because of the
Okay.
different things that take place. But I've been working on that, and I got it back from my developmental editor.
Yeah.
I have a great gal. She's in England, and
Okay.
she sends me like 24 pages of evaluating everything.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that's a lot. But do you see that as a challenge, or do you sometimes need to mentally prepare yourself like, oh, I wish it weren't this much, but now it is this much?
Well,
How do you
she's
handle
usually
that?
right on. I mean, there was a
Okay.
time when I was writing my other series that she wanted me to have angry sex in one of the
Oh,
scenes. I said,
okay.
I don't write angry sex. I'm sorry. I just don't do that. I mean, this is the Hallmark book.
That's right. Angry closed door scene.
I said, I'm not doing that. So I had to really sit on that one and rewrite it and reach out to someone else for a while
Mm,
on that one to help me, um, because I was kind of new to writing straight romance, and I wanted to make
okay.
sure I hit all the beats and made it a good story. And so that was the only
Yeah.
time I had a major conflict with my editor. And I worked with her for, oh, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, you know,
Okay.
and,
So you
and
trust her.
yeah, I trust her. And so I kept telling her, I don't like when you're writing a book, everybody, and then you decided to write a prequel, there's certain things in the one book that you have to have in the prequel. And so you have to
Yes.
figure out how to do that. Sometimes it doesn't really match with the story that you're writing at the time, but you have to
Mm,
figure a way. And I hate to tell you, a lot of people aren't gets this, but I put it in chat and I said, chat, help me, you know, help me figure out how to do this, and it
Yeah.
made suggestions to me, and some of
Okay.
it, were okay, and some of it didn't. But I've done a lot of brainstorming with it to help me get to the point. That plus my developmental editor. I always
Yes.
trust my developmental editor over any AI stuff,
Yeah, for
because
sure.
she's a human being. She knows my story. She knows how I
She
write.
knows you.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But it's good. I think it's great that you were open to, trying something different because from what I've heard, and I've listened to a lot of AI podcasts and you know how it affects
yeah,
writers in the industry. And it is very good at finding the holes and being able to plug them in. And you were using it for that, right? To
yeah,
kind of like, okay, I just can't see where the connections are. Please help me. And it
yeah.
is good for that. And it's not like it's writing your book for you
Right.
that I would be totally against for sure. But I mean, I use it for brainstorming as well,
Yeah,
and it's a good tool. And you can use that. I would definitely not use that to the exclusion of brainstorming with other writers or your
right.
editor or
Yeah,
whoever you brainstorm with, because I think the human connection will always be key to the to the health of our souls, you could say. But it is a helpful tool, right? I mean, we
yeah,
use non-living tools all the time, and that's exactly what it
right.
is.
And
Yeah.
I'm kind of a pantster. I
Oh,
I
so am I.
I don't know what the stories. I mean, I kind of have a general idea what the story is going to be, and then I start
Yes.
writing. And I know people. I've heard a million times they say, "Don't go back to the first chapter and start at the beginning." When you're, I always do that because I
Yeah.
have to get into the story world
Yes.
to know what
Same. Same.
happens next.
That's right. I usually know my beginning, like a few scenes in the middle, and then the end, and
Yeah,
everything else in between is like it's up for free grabs. It just
right.
comes what comes. Okay, so that's really exciting. You're working on the prequel. Is that like a novella? Is that a full-length novel?
Well, when I sent it to my developmental editor, it was the biggest book I'd ever written. But then we have to cut out all sorts.
Wow.
We have to cut out a whole bunch of stuff to make
Okay.
it more because I had to go back to craft. Um,
Hmm.
I found what I was writing were a lot of scenes. Big mistake with a lot of writers. You write a lot of scenes and then you try to
Yeah.
hook them all together. And I went back and I dug out, my craft books. I have a library of books on writing. And
I see
whenever I
that.
get stuck, I pull something out. It's much
Okay.
easier than doing all that online stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
when you get everything's a tool, but
Hmm.
so I went back to craft on my mystery and thriller and
Okay.
realized that I was trying to do a romance and a mystery and they were not coming together right. It's like I'd
Mm.
be focused on the mystery and all of a sudden do a shift over to, so I had to find a way to bring them together to work it in.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I studied my mystery craft book
Okay.
and so then I got it. My plot lines and my plot points
Yes.
all figured out. So I'm working on that now.
Okay. And did you find that because they weren't coming together correctly, did you find that one had to take slight precedence over the other?
Yeah,
Like the mystery over the romance? The
yeah,
romance takes a little bit of a backseat. Still there, sprinkled, but the
yeah,
mystery is the forefront. Okay.
yeah.
Yes, that's
And
what I thought. Yeah.
and because it's a prequel, it has to have this romance.
Yes.
So
Yes. Yeah. For the others to make sense. That makes
yeah,
sense. Okay, so we have someone here. That's really cool with the process of the steps to book writing. I'm currently waiting to release my book soon, probably in the late summer since I'm super busy. Could always use some advice. Well, this talk
yeah.
is chock full of advice. Thank you, Judy. Speaking of advice, what are maybe one or two of your favorite books that you have in your library behind you that you really either use with a lot of your work or have a soft spot in your heart?
Let's see. Yeah, of course I can't find it now. Um, this came. She's got another one. What's it called? Oh, this one. It's Story Genius. But I read her
Okay.
first one. It's called Wired for Story.
Okay. I'm going to put that in the chat.
It's like, it says, the writer's guide to using brain science to hook readers from the very first sentence.
Oh, I like that. Okay. I gotta get that book. I'm gonna add this to my own TBR here. Hold on. That
So
sounds
I think
good.
this one is better than her second one, but she
Okay.
goes into some more areas about writing. It's called Story Genius. It's by Lisa
Okay.
Kron, Cron, Kron.
Okay.
And what she does is make the story interesting. She talks about people read to find out what's going to happen next.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And so they're curious. So you need to put in things that spark their curiosity.
Mm-hmm. Especially in a mystery, right? Where you're
Yeah.
constantly looking for the next clue or like the next realization.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
it applies to anything, even in
for sure.
my romances.
Mm-hmm.
I start with an inciting incident in
For
all of
sure.
them.
Yes.
My favorite one is called Heartstrings in that series,
Okay.
and it begins with a man, my my male character, love interest in it, at a graveyard, and he's putting roses on his mother's grave,
Hmm.
and he's apologizing for not being a better son, and
Hmm.
he had gone through rehab, and he was doing his 12 steps. And so he
Okay.
was going to apologize and make amends to all the people he hurt. And so that he apologized to everyone except for the woman that he loved.
Oh, wow.
So that's
That's a good scene.
so that's the first chapter of that story. So,
Okay.
and he was a famous country western singer.
Oh, okay, even better. So like a prodigal son theme coming in. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. But
Wow.
he destroyed all of that by getting drunk and running into a tree and almost dying in the,
Wow.
because he was miserable without her.
Oh my goodness.
So it's a second chance romance, and it's very
Yes.
heartfelt. Um, I had people reach out to me who had, one woman had a son who had been, you know, in rehab and was dealing with alcoholism and that. And my character is dealing with that in the story, but he's trying to be a good person, but he's being tested all the time. And
Of
so,
course.
you know, um, it's a very heartfelt story. All my Love and Leavenworth ones are, have an emotional beginning, that hooks you about the different characters where you want to know more about the story.
Yes. Well, for sure, we'll be putting those links down below in the description once I re-upload this. It is live and it's on the channel, but I will kind of re-upload it as its own separate file and we'll put all that in for sure. That sounds amazing. All the books sound amazing. Like, and you have quite a bit of a backlist, so people could really jump on your name and
Yeah.
just be like, okay, let's just read all of Judy Leslie's books.
Well, that's one thing I learned. I wrote The House at the Cove 4 years ago,
Okay.
and I released it. I've totally rewritten it. It was called Cook's Cove, actually. And
Hmm.
what happened was I I was never really satisfied with it, and I
Hmm.
started to market it, and then I wasn't sure. So I went through all the insecurities that beginning authors go through. Did I make the right choice? Blah blah blah. And then somebody pointed me into the direction. There's a gal who teaches a lot of classes that I took a class from, and I asked her what I should do about that book, and she said put it aside and write an entirely different series, which is why I wrote the Love and Leavenworth one. And then I went back and I rewrote that, and I wrote all the other books in the
Wow.
because I um, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like the vision and what I had for success, because I was lucky enough to have, my historical fiction book really take
Mm-hmm.
off. I felt like a failure because my other book didn't do the same thing. But part
Okay.
of it was because I hadn't I didn't have a clear vision of what my genre was. It was
Mm,
kind of a
mm-hmm.
mixed match of literary fiction, romance, mystery, thriller, blah blah blah, all this stuff. And
Yeah.
I didn't know how to market it. I didn't know really what it was, and so I had to put it aside and learn
Okay.
more and then come back to it and then rewrite it. And like I said, now I have 450 reviews on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
A lot, most of them are 5 stars. So I needed to rewrite it and make it the best it could be
Yes.
to get it out there. But a lot of beginning authors make that mistake, and even though I've had years of writing experience, I make those mistakes too.
But that's going back to community. That's why you have your writing community, right? To kind of help you see, oh, maybe this, why don't you try it this way? Or as that person said, put it aside, do something else. And yeah, yeah, that's right. I mean, I know we always kind of have this idea of, oh, we're going to write our book. It's going to be a bestseller. It's going to be 5 stars all the way. But, there's a lot of different there's different factors that can come in the way of that. Sometimes it's our work that we need to just work on it a little bit more, or um, it's also books. Your books aren't meant for everyone, right? It's not
Right.
not everyone's gonna
Right.
love it, so you have to understand that. Yeah, yeah, but
Yeah.
you have a very good mentality about it, and it seems like a very smart decision for you to put it
Yeah.
aside, come back to it, and look at it. Now you have all four. You're working on the prequel, so that's
Yeah.
an amazing story there.
Yeah. And you need to write a lot of books if you want to make any money.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because if people enjoy your book, then you're like, so where's the rest?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah,
know.
for
I
sure.
I had to do that with The House at the Cove. And then
Okay.
the second book is No Place to Hide,
Yes.
because I end it with a little question. I
Mm-hmm.
wrap up the story's complete, everything's happy, but I leave it with a question. And then I
Yeah.
start the next story, and the next story continues, with Sean and Jenny. And
Mm-hmm.
that one is another one of those. They're really tested. They're really tested,
Mm.
their relationship, and they go through an awful lot to pull it off. And it has a twist at the ending again that
Of
everybody's,
course.
it was like, whoa.
Well, I can't wait to dive in myself. We do have another comment here. Yes, that I had to do is rewrite my book so many times. It's painful to cut characters that were so funny. There you go. So, yeah, that is a painful part of writing. It's when
Yeah.
write, let's say, the perfect scene in your head, and then you have your beta readers or your editor be like, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. I know it's
Yes.
it's it's kind of hard with that. I mean, I've had to do that. I had to, you know, struggle. And I'm,
Yeah.
I'm struggling with that right now. I have a scene in my book that I just love, like with my
Mm.
prequel, but I don't know if it's going to end up cut or not. I'll just have to
Oh,
see.
yeah. Well, speaking of favorite scenes, do you have a favorite scene from The House of the Cove that you wrote? And yeah, tell
I
it.
do. Well, I like many writers, I visualize everything
Yes.
when I'm writing, and I'm in my story world, and it's like directing a play.
Mm-hmm.
You these are real people to you.
Yes.
And so you want them not to be cardboard. You want them to have feelings and have personalities, and people can relate to them, but you like them. You
That's
like
right.
them. And so it's kind of hard to say because there's several scenes in the story, but I think when Jenny and Sean first meet, and it's
Mm.
and it's awkward. He's playing,
Oh,
and
is it?
she's went to hear him play at the bar, and she's kind of intrigued with him. And Tess is playing the accordion,
Okay.
and they're doing Irish jig, and they're doing Cajun music, and they're doing, so they're having a good time at this bar, and and
Yeah, I want to
and
go.
and she Tess wants to introduce her to Sean after.
Mm-hmm.
So she goes over to meet him, and she feels really awkward because he's awkward to her. He knew her aunt. He was good friends
Yes.
with her aunt. And
Yeah.
he reaches out and wants to hug her because her aunt has just died. But he doesn't.
Oh.
He's trying, he cares deeply for her grieving process,
Mm-hmm.
and he's heard stories about her for years, and she doesn't know
Mm.
this. She doesn't know that it was really close with her aunt, and that saw pictures of her when she was a little kid and heard all these stories about her. So he's got a whole history in his mind of who this woman is.
Okay.
And so he cares for her, for many different levels, and she's kind of taken aback that,
Mm-hmm.
you know her guard just falls down, and she just, you know is trying to fight the tears back because he's so compassionate towards her.
Oh.
I know, it was like trying to write that without it being corny, and
Yes.
trying
Yeah.
to show that. And then there's several other scenes between them, where they're dealing with, you know Sean has his own issues. He has his
Okay.
own secrets, his own
Mm-hmm.
wounds.
Yes.
And so he's not ready for a relationship, and and
Mm.
and she's kind of taken by him and would like to have a relationship with him,
When
but
she's in a
he's
relationship.
yeah. So she has to get out of her other relationship, which kind of goes through all that's
Yeah.
that stuff. But at the end, it's a slow burn. They get together.
Yes.
Everybody knows that, or reads the story, that they're going to get together eventually. But it's just all the different stuff. And then
Yes.
when they finally get together, that was a fun scene to write too, because the awkwardness, you know, she had just gone
Mm-hmm.
through a lot of stuff, and he confesses to her about his life, that she didn't
Mm.
know, his
Yes. Yeah.
secrets. So it was
Okay.
it was fun.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. So I'm guessing that means that he did not grow up in Cook's Cove, right? Because then they would
No,
have met at
he
some
was in
point when
Ireland.
she was there.
He grew up in Ireland. In fact, the second book, he goes back to Ireland when his father dies, and
Oh, okay, okay.
so he's has to struggle with his feelings for
Mm,
her, and
okay.
because they broke up, you know, and so he has
Oh,
to deal with that. And then there's um, a tragic event that takes place with Jenny, and
okay.
he takes her to Ireland after that to help her heal. and
Hmm.
he's got so she has to deal with her own demons when she's in
Okay.
Ireland with him, and she meets his sister and his aunt, which is eccentric just like her aunt was,
Ooh.
which is a little bit of a, he calls his aunt a witch, and she denies the fact that she's a witch,
Oh.
but there's some sort of, you know magic to her, and she lives in
Uh-huh.
a little house in Ireland near the cliffs. And
Okay.
so
Yeah,
Jenny's
fits the
there for a
vibe.
while, then they come
Mm-hmm.
back,
Okay.
and then they deal with a whole new set of problems.
Wow. Well, it sounds like, yeah, it sounds great. I can't wait to read, well, the first one, going to the second one. So you said there's four in the series, right?
Five.
Oh, there's five.
Let's
Okay.
see. Let me see.
And, oh,
No, four. Four. I have the next one is the Strokes of Desperation. The
okay.
third one. This is
Okay.
this is Jenny's best friend, who's an artist,
Oh,
who
yes.
finds a locket and starts painting the memories of the girl who
Oh.
wore the
Oh,
locket.
wow.
And the girl starts taking over her mind. And so it's strokes
Ooh.
of desperation.
Yeah,
So
going through some possession.
yeah, so
This sounds interesting.
there's some real this book, each one of my books deal with a different thing. The first one deals with um, grief,
Yes.
and the second one deals with um, supporting each other, a
Hmm.
couple supporting each other during difficult times, because something happens to both, the male and the female in the story, that they need support from the other person in order
Yeah.
to make it through. And
Hmm.
then this one is about what would you trade for success?
Hmm. That's a
Because
good question.
her pictures are really popular that she paints, but it's making her crazy to paint them. And she's being
Ah,
promised success if she keeps on painting them. So are you willing to
wow.
give up your mental health to succeed?
It's true. It's a big trade that a lot of people make these days, right? The more
Yeah,
followers, the more crazy you're trying to post, the more, yeah,
yeah.
very timely. Yes.
So,
Wow.
and then the
Okay.
next one is Taken from the Sea, and it's
Okay.
about a gal who um, inherited part of her father's company when he died, and he was in
Mm-hmm.
a shipping business, and she doesn't want any part of it. And
Mm-hmm.
but there are some bad guys who want part of the business, and so they want her to sell her stock so they can take over the company. And
Okay.
she is not interested because, her parents, she inherited this, but she was adopted. She was not their child. And her sister keeps reminding her that she
Hmm.
wasn't really part of the family. And so the bad guys start harassing her and
Okay.
chasing her. And she loves sailboats. And so she goes out on her sailboat to get away from them. And they chase her on the boat. But she goes to an island where there are seals and hangs
Oh.
out on the island for a little bit. And a fisherman sees her and he captures her and puts her in a cage and brings her
Oh.
back to his place because he thinks she's a selkie.
Oh, yes. About those. That makes sense. And I'm like, why did he put her in the cage?
He thinks she's a selkie, and he's
Yes.
got himself a selkie now.
Oh, goodness.
And so
Does he fall in love with this Selkie?
it's, Beauty
Wow.
and the Beast sort of thing, Beauty
Yes.
and the Beast thing. And then, yeah.
I love it.
So
Love it. Love it.
that one's a good one too. So,
Okay. So, because you have a series, how do you start planting those seeds? Okay, so the third and the fourth book are somewhat separate from the first and the second book, right? Because they're
yeah,
different people. So,
yeah.
like, even just going from book one to book two, um, how did you prepare to plant those seeds to carry over into book two with Jenny and Sean's story?
Well, I just wanted to write about them, because they
Mm-hmm.
do come together in the end of the first book. And
Yeah.
I thought, well, I just wanted to keep writing about them. And um, it, um, it just is one of those things that I just started writing and the story just started to unfold. And then
Mm,
it dealt with a trauma that Jenny goes through. And
mm-hmm.
I thought about um, what she needed to get
Mm-hmm.
through the trauma and how desperate Sean was to help her, get through the trauma and what he
Mm-hmm.
would do to help her along those lines until she's well enough,
Yeah.
and mentally well enough. And she is haunted by
Hmm.
a ghost, an evil spirit, you
Ooh.
know, that
Yeah.
she's trying to deal with. And she has to do it on her own. It's,
Yeah.
I wanted to say in my stories, all the women are strong women. They have vulnerable sides to them, but they all solve their own problems in my
Yes.
stories.
Yeah.
There are guys that are there for support, but none of the guys solves the problem for the gal. They all
No,
have to
and
do it.
yeah, and that wouldn't really make a compelling protagonist anyways, right? If
Right.
someone's figuring that out for them. Yeah, men and women both have their stuff that they need to deal with, and it would go vice versa for men too. If there's a woman just like coming in and dealing with his issues and cleaning it up for him,
Yeah.
he doesn't look appealing in the least, and neither does the woman, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, I
So
love
she
that.
she has to support him when he's going through his stuff,
Yes, yeah,
when,
yeah.
and he's, when he shuts her out, and he's
Mm,
not very nice to her and that, and she has to just be tough and hang in there, is going to be with him, knowing that he's going through all this difficult time, you know,
mm,
and
yeah.
so, I
So
just,
that's real love.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things. I'm older, and so in my romances, they're not um, a lot of um, physical driven stories. They're
Hmm.
more character driven,
Yeah.
that they're there and they grow together and their love
Yeah.
grows together. It's not like,
Yeah.
oh, I see you across the room and I jump in bed with you and we're in love. And
Yeah.
that's the,
Not to say that that can't turn into real love,
right.
but it's true. There's such a focus these days on the physical aspect, and it has its place. But yeah, I mean, if you want something stable and long lasting, you're going to have a love story like yours. Yeah.
Well, I have love scenes in all of my Cook's Cove books, except for the first one. That's the kiss.
Okay.
But
Yes.
Jenny and Sean get it on in the second book.
Not to worry, it's going to happen.
And all the other books, they deal, there's a love interest, and who cares about them. Oh, and I forgot, I do have another book in this series.
Oh,
Um, the see, The Shadows from the Past. And
okay.
that's another spooky one. It's more of
Mm,
a gal and buys a haunted house, and the
okay.
typewriter starts typing at midnight every night, and
Oh
it's
my.
and it's a plea for help. And
I love
so,
this. You got me hooked. I'm sold.
so then there's
So
a
what?
whole mystery around what's going on with that.
Oh wow. Well, what I didn't mention before is that I'm a huge antique lover. I have an old
Oh,
typewriter that's like 100 years old. I have a gramophone. So when you said
yeah.
typewriter, middle of the night ghost, yes, that's my book. Oh my goodness. Well, this is great. I've got my like my whole year of reading ahead of me. That's so exciting. Wow. And that one is called Shadows from the Past, you said.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's running away from an abusive relationship. She was married to a
Mm,
guy who was abusive, and so she changes her identity, and she gets a
okay.
new haircut, new name, moves to Cook's
Yes.
Cove, and then
Okay.
buys a haunted house.
I would take the haunted house any day over the other set of problems. Well, that's great. So, obviously, you write mystery. What is one thing that you most find rewarding as a mystery writer?
um, Having a twist at the end that people didn't
Mm,
expect. I mean, even in that story with the haunted house, it has a twist at the end. Being able
mhm.
to, they're more thriller mysteries in a sense. A thriller is when the protagonist is the victim.
Okay.
Mysteries are often with a detective, looking for, solving. And my detective is not the main person in my
Yes.
stories, and he's only in a few of them. He's in my Native American um, investigator is in my second book. my third book. He plays a bigger role in Strokes of Desperation because they're trying to find out who's killing off these Native American girls.
Yeah.
And, you know, but it's not a mystery in that sense. It's a
Mm.
mystery thriller where the protagonist is trying to find out who's after her and why, or, you know, that sort of
Yes.
thing. And
Yes.
solving the puzzle with that. She's trying to figure that one out. So,
Yes. Yeah.
and it's usually the last person you expect.
For sure. For sure. Those are the best, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I have someone here. Wow, just hearing the description gives me the chills, the feeling of coldness. Literally, I'm intrigued. LOL. Yes, that's how I felt too, especially about the typewriter.
I have
It's
my
true. I
little,
felt that.
I have a toy typewriter there, but I have a great big one. I have a real
Yes,
antique one. You've probably
yes,
seen the picture of it in some of my things that
yes.
I posted. Yeah. That thing weighs a
Yeah, yeah.
ton. I put it on my dining room table. I swear the thing must weigh 50 pounds.
It does. It does. I went to a summer market last June and like just set up the table, sell your books, right? And I always bring with me when I go to my book signings, I bring my 1925 Underwood typewriter. And it's heavy. And the
Yeah.
photographer of the event, he came around and he's like, "Hey," and I'm like, "Hi." And he said, "Okay, I want you to go in the middle of the street and bring your typewriter." And I said, "Okay."
It's a little heavy.
Like let's get the workout in. So I picked it up. I'm like, okay, it's heavy. And then he says, you're holding it and you're kind of holding it close, right? Just to help with that. And he's like, so I want you to hold it out. Okay. And I'm like holding it out, like, take the picture, take the picture. It's actually one of my favorite pictures ever. Like when, a writer picture, it's amazing. He's a great photographer. But yeah, I'll never forget that. The
I,
weight.
when I had my antique shop, I had things that you cannot find in antique shops these days.
Really?
I had a pharmacist scale with the little
Oh,
weights on it.
yes, yes.
And I had in the window of my antique shop, I had these coffee grinder things, and each one was like huge, and it was brass,
Mm-hmm.
and the bottom was red
Wow.
with the gold painting and everything on it.
Wow.
And the drug
Ah.
dealers used to come and grind their kilos in it.
What?
To sell, make their little baggies, they put the pot in.
Oh my goodness.
And it was like,
That is crazy.
had to shoo those people away before I got in trouble.
Wow. Or you could just leave the door open and just let them know at this time, come and do your thing. And then you got to go.
Oh, it smelled just.
Oh no, that's true.
I had a wood stove that
Okay.
I got up in the morning and I broke up Presto logs and I lit it, and it took an hour for it to get hot enough to boil water for coffee.
Wow.
And I lived that way.
But you know what? There's a certain beauty in that simplicity, right?
Yeah,
You,
yeah, yeah.
would you say that you felt the moments more when you
Yes.
were in that kind of lifestyle?
Yeah, we had there, Bellingham's quite hilly, and we
Mm.
had a dog sled race, all our friends,
Oh.
and it was, you couldn't have a professional dog sledder, and they were cardboard boxes with dogs and carts with sled, this the rails underneath,
Really?
and we had
Yes.
it up the hill, and the dogs would all race down. People would crash and burn all the way down.
Oh my goodness.
We did
That's
that in the
crazy.
snow. I mean, we
Those
did
are the good old days.
wild and crazy things back in those days. But
Yeah,
in my, I'll share this real quick.
sure.
When I was 19, I dated a rock star, and I went on
You
tour with him,
you
with his
did? Do we
band.
do we know who this rock
You're
star
too
is?
young to know. You're too young to.
For those
But
who are not too young.
you guys are too young. I mean, this band was long gone by the time you were born. But I mean, it was a band, and I
Yep.
remained friends with those members of the band for years and years. And
Okay.
then the guy that I was in a relationship, actually we lived together for a year and a half. He died about 2 years ago, so that was kind of sad.
Oh. Mm.
But yeah, we had a good time back in those days, and it was fun, and I got to see all the behind the scenes stuff. And so
Yeah.
in my story, Heartstrings, I was able to put a little of that flavor in because it's not
Yes.
as glamorous as everybody thinks it is.
No, no, it's not. I mean, yeah, everyone thinks like, oh, Hollywood, it's so glamorous. Not that I don't think so. Like all
Yeah,
those long hours and all that
yeah,
specific stress that goes with that industry. So I'm sure it's the same for rock stars and musicians and
yeah,
well,
yeah,
so it is life, right? That is life.
yeah.
And whatever industry you're in, even as a writer, a lot of people think, oh, it's so poetic and it's so
Oh yeah,
beautiful. And, it's just this idyllic lifestyle that you lead. Not necessarily. We have our own set of issues and problems too.
yeah.
So,
It's a
yeah.
passion because let me tell
Yeah.
you, if it's not your passion, don't do it because it's really hard.
For sure, for sure. I think the passion that people see for what they do, whether you're a rock star or you're an actor or you're a writer, that is what touches people who see you and they're like, wow, you're so passionate about what you do. So it must be glamorous. It
Yeah,
must be amazing. Which, yes, to the people who are living it, it is. But I think that's what they're looking for more than anything is, oh, not so I can be a writer like you. Maybe that's not their passion. It's to find that thing in their life that strokes that passion
yeah,
in their own life, right? And that's what they're looking for. So,
yeah, yeah. And
yeah.
it's important. I mean, I've had people tell me, "It's like, why are you doing this now? Why aren't you just
Mm,
kicking back and enjoying life and all of that?" And I was like, "Well, this is what makes me happy. This is
yeah.
what I love hanging out with my characters and that. I mean, and right now, especially what's going on in the world, what better place to be than hanging out with your friends and your stories?"
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. That's it. So for anybody who is, wanting to write mystery, newer authors, or maybe, they are an established author, but now they're wanting to jump into the mystery genre, what would be one or two pieces of advice that you would give them that has helped you?
Read books on how every genre has its beats. You
Hmm.
know,
Yes.
romance has their, three dates and a disaster, that kind of stuff.
Yes.
They, I mean, they're really formula, the romance, but people love them and that's what they want to read with that.
Yeah.
They just want to know the tropes and they want to read that over and over again. Um,
Hmm.
I think nowadays, what I learned from Bob Dugoni, who writes mysteries, he writes detective. He wrote a lot of legal mysteries years ago, and now he's kind of
Okay.
moved in. He has more detectives ones, but
Mm.
he's one of those millionaire authors.
Okay.
He's been around for a long time, but your characters have to be interesting.
Hmm.
I mean, everybody can write the same story, but it's what who your characters are and
Yeah.
how people can relate to them. What's their backstory?
Yeah.
Why are they doing what they're doing? Why should a reader read your story when it's almost the same as somebody else's story? What makes a
Hmm.
difference? What are you bringing to that? What you need to think about all the different elements of the personality of this person. And nowadays, just having a flat person doesn't cut it when people read
Mm-mm.
books. You
Yeah,
know, they got to have some sort of quirk.
that's
In
right.
my haunted house story, I was out to lunch with my daughter, and I said, I got to find a career for this character. Everybody's got to have a job.
Yeah, yeah.
and and so she had a job. I said, this my character has a job in the city, and now she's and some when she got married she had to leave her job because of her husband, blah blah blah. I said, what could it be? And my daughter said, how about working at a burlesque place as a trapeze artist?
Oh, wow. Okay, that's very
So that's
specific.
what she is in that story. And she,
Really?
yes. So,
I love it.
so I made her an interesting person. And then
Yes.
I wove in not just that, but I wove into her swinging on a chair, on a
Mm.
swing when she was a child and trying
Mm-hmm.
to touch the stars. I, brought in all of this
Yeah.
other stuff around that, and that the costume that she wore, when this guy, this romance that she has with this guy, and he looks at these pictures and he's like, she's all dolled out in these outfits, and he's like trying to figure out who is this woman, But that talent becomes very handy later on
Mm.
in her story,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
you know.
Wow. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it,
Don't spoil it.
no, but I mean, you have to make your characters not just, I
Yeah.
mean, unless you're writing that story, the boring lady with the cat sitting in the window watching everybody go by. Then
Yeah.
when the blinds are closed, she's smoking pot and dancing to whatever.
But there you go. That adds a little flavor. Oh, that's great. No, that's really great. Well, you have been an amazing guest. You have told so many great stories. This is a treasure trove of writer's advice, and even for readers who are interested in mystery, they can like
Yeah.
devour your whole backlist of books. So thank you so much,
Oh,
Judy,
well,
for
thanks for
coming
having me.
on.
It's
Yeah,
fun.
this was great. I loved hearing all your stories. And oh, do you have your book with you? The House at the Cove? Perfect. So everyone, House at the Cove, first book in the series. Go get your copy
And then,
today.
and then the next one, No Place to Hide.
Yes. Perfect.
That's where she's running
Perfect.
from the ghosts.
Mm. Well, and thank you everyone for coming tonight. Wish you all a good night.
Thank you. Bye
Bye.
bye.